DoorDash just finished their Q1 2024 earnings call, and they talked about Dashers. Not a lot, which unfortunately is kind of the norm on these calls, but don't worry, I listened to the entire 45-minute call for you, picking out the most important things that you're going to want to know as a Dasher. This call with co-founder, chair, CEO Tony Xu and CFO Ravi Unaconda, and they were asked, well, what about the big players in the space when it comes to logistics platforms, Walmart, Amazon, and why wouldn't they have a benefit over the smaller logistics platform or the platform services of DoorDash? And Tony mentioned that the Dasher supply is the advantage to cost savings on the DoorDash platform. And it makes sense because Tony continued to detail that customers want better customer service. They want cheaper prices. They want faster delivery. And at least part of that is going to come from the benefit of having more and more Dashers. So we have this Dasher supply, more Dashers to do the shops. Actually, let's talk about that. New verticals, retail, and grocery orders. Let me know down below how you're liking those. But isn't there any concern from DoorDash about the grocery section? It's a new vertical, retail orders. Tony mentioned they're actually seeing increased inbound demand. That's grocers, retailers actually reaching out to DoorDash to be on their platform. Personally speaking here, the new verticals, the grocery, the retail, there's shop and deliver convenience, there's of course alcohol deliveries, that really in the last, year and a half or so that I've been tracking this for you, that when it first came to these marketplaces, at least US marketplaces, obviously international marketplaces as well, that this is not only a thing that DoorDash is focusing on, but this is certainly here to stay. So what does that mean for you as a Dasher? So if I'm dashing and my bread and butter and my favorite thing to do is to dash at restaurants, the standard food delivery, of course, I'm looking for Dasher preferences, so make sure to subscribe so I can report on Dasher preferences when they come to here in Pittsburgh. But you're going to 100% continue to see more and more grocery shop and deliver, the retail, the alcohol mixed in there with the, of course, the US restaurant market segment. But Tony mentioned on the call that they're happy with their growth in active categories in health and beauty. We already mentioned grocery and it's just going to continue. Now, that's not necessarily the worst thing for you as a Dasher because when I teach you here, the dollars to mile, how much am I getting paid per mile driven, and then dollars to time, how much am I getting paid and how much time is it really going to take? If you can do a 1, 2, 3 item shop for, let's say, $7, 1.2 miles, a stellar payout, and it doesn't take that long, it doesn't necessarily mean that shop and deliver are bad. Even for myself, who's not really a fan of shop and deliver, it just gets complicated when you get those 10, 15, 20 item shops. Just be careful of that when it comes to time. Now, unfortunately, while we don't get the letter to investors anymore, the quarterly letter that I like because it gives us usually some visuals and specific details on Dashers that I believe is now an annual thing. In the press release, at least we get this. In the vast majority of communities we operate in, our solid execution contributed to greater choice for consumers, higher sales for merchants, increased earnings for Dashers, and improved profitability in our business. After listening to quarter after quarter after quarter for years upon years of these investor calls, every single quarter, DoorDash is reporting that Dashers are earning more. But that is always really not the full story. Listen to what came next. But what about restaurants though? If you're like me, if you want to do the restaurant runs, isn't restaurant growth decelerating? And actually DoorDash said that themselves on this press release. And even though they cited that in the press release, Tony was confident, hey, we are not concerned about deceleration. All the numbers are growing. The order volume, the users, the user order frequency, the restaurants even highlighting even more partners that no, they're not really concerned about any deceleration, even though we mentioned it. Now get this. Okay, so restaurant deceleration isn't really a concern. What about consumer demand dropping due to inflation? People aren't spending as much money, discretionary income, let's say, on food delivery. Are you seeing that? And Tony said, well, no, we're not really seeing that our consumers are strained. Again, he's saying, well, no, the consumers that we're seeing, they're not really spending less. They're not really affected by inflation right now. And he tied that in to the U.S. restaurant growth over the last 6 quarters. Like, well, the growth in the restaurant space over the last 6 quarters, like 18 months, is pretty flatline, is pretty consistent, even with concerns over inflation. Now, one thing that Tony and the team are really adamantly against, it's new regulations, specifically in New York City and Seattle, that new regulations are mandating a minimum pay for dashers and independent contractors. Not only in this call and in the press release and on the DoorDash official blog, DoorDash has said plenty of times that they are not in favor of new regulations for minimum pay in Seattle, in New York. And if you drive in those marketplaces, it doesn't even have to be on DoorDash because it's still affected by the independent contractor regulations here. Let us know how it's going. And even if you drive in California under Prop 22, and then if you're in other markets, let us know how your earnings are so we can compare. DoorDash is saying, hey, we're going to regulators that wanted this law, and we told them it's going to work in opposition to what they actually want to do. And that is, per DoorDash, what's happening. So more costs for merchants, less dashers that are in these marketplaces. I believe 20% less new dashers in New York City, for example. I don't see that expanding to different states or marketplaces, at least not in 2024. So we'll keep an eye on that. The New York City market and then the Seattle market. And then, of course, we've already had Prop 22 in California. But even here in Pennsylvania, we have a new beta program, a 6-month campaign for portable benefits. So since you, as an independent contractor, you don't have any kind of benefits, health, vision, healthcare, all of that you'd have with an employer, there's a 6-month trial program here in Pennsylvania. So any dasher that makes at least $1,000 pre-tip for the Q2 duration gets access to this. So if I qualify there, I'll let you know how it goes. But this next part might be the most important thing discussed because they were finally, and really the only question, directly asked about dashers here. So don't leave this video, drop a like on it if you can, consider sharing it. When asked about dasher supply, so the aforementioned markets that have regulations, they've seen less new dashers, which means it's harder to sign up and actually get approved other than just being on a wait list. Here overall, Ravi mentioned dasher supply is healthy. They're not concerned about supply, and as you kind of figure, they always want to make improvements to the customer experience, cost savings, faster deliveries, more accuracy was mentioned several times, both from Tony and Ravi during this call. But about dashers, Ravi mentioned we've redesigned the Dasher app. We have different ways to earn. These things, improvements to the Dasher app are increasing Dasher retention. So staying on as a Dasher, not just, quit driving. They're keeping Dashers longer. And let me know what you think about this, because I heard this and I kind of knew the real answer. Ravi mentioned that Dashers are dashing more hours. Why do you think that is? So yeah, dashers are staying on the platform, longer retention, and then more hours as well. Specifically, that's more hours from, maybe keyword here, existing dashers like myself. So why do you think that is? I could guess that somehow, I'm not sure how this is calculated, they say dashers are earning more, but per hour though, if you want to earn, let's say $120 a day, you might have to have more hours. That explains that to get that 120. And then the last thing that Ravi said here to that initial question, that they have a long list of improvements that they want to make to Dasher costs. What does that really mean? Specifically, they want to make Dasher costs more efficient. That does not mean more pay for Dashers. Making Dasher costs more efficient means exactly what they've reported on in other quarters. Dasher acquisition costs at large, let's say, can encompass, let's say, sign-on bonuses. It can include incentives and bonus pay, and just on the macro, like at large, general Dasher pay. So if they want to make these costs, as a cost to them to pay Dashers, more efficient, that does not mean more pay for Dashers, something that I'm continually concerned about in 2024, and I'll follow that for you closely. In those marketplaces that I just mentioned, where they do have to pay Dashers more due to new regulations, New York City and Seattle, Ravi mentioned that initially they just absorbed some of those costs. So they paid out more to, again, absorb some of those costs. And he said that's going to basically improve for them, so they're not going to absorb as many of those costs. Here's what I got out of this call. Listen to this if you're a Dasher. So number one, the conversation, I kind of compare this to Uber, where their quarterly calls are always like, tell us about mobility, ride share. They don't really talk about deliverables as much, maybe 80-20. Versus quarter after quarter for DoorDash, the conversation is always new verticals. It's the grocery, the retail, these shop and delivers, the alcohol, convenience. They didn't mention package returns, but that's bundled in new verticals. I'm thinking for you as a Dasher, your portfolio might be like, 70%? 80% restaurant runs, let's say years ago, versus I'd say 2023, it was probably, let's say 60%, 55%, and then the rest filling in with convenience, grocery. I think in 2024, what are you seeing? I'm seeing almost 50-50, and honestly on earn per order, I'm seeing almost an inverse, probably 70, 80, 85, maybe 90% shop and deliver for convenience, retail, non-restaurant. Now, thank you. This is why we're a team, because I'm one person in one marketplace that you highlighted, and let me know if this is the case down below, that on Earn by Time, you won't get shop and deliver. Thank you. That's fantastic. So I might be doing a lot more Earn by Time shifts coming up. And then of course, there's Dasher preferences, which are coming in certain marketplaces in the coming weeks and months where you can just toggle off certain order types. Now, almost more than ever, just look at other niches that you're interested in. What I like doing, package, ride share, grocery on another platform, shop and deliver. You can do large item if you have the right kind of vehicle and setup for it. I would look at digital side hustles, online side hustles, selling a product, course, or service, because I just wouldn't put everything you have into DoorDash in 2024. On the other side, I want to give you a neutral stance here. This is why you're subscribed. If you're not, consider subscribing. All I do is help you make money in different side hustles. Check out yourdrivermight.com. Start with our starter guide if you're just getting into this, and get our earnings tracking spreadsheet so you can track the numbers and actually make sense of it versus just guessing. I still like DoorDash. Basically, year after year in my ratings of the best side hustles, it's pretty much always number one. It's because of the options to earn now with the hourly Earn by Time, earn per order. I do like the different types of orders. You just got to know, obviously, which ones to accept. But if you accept the right kind of orders, like I just told you, I've had some high margin orders that are 1, 2, 3 item shops. So overall, kind of more the same here as far as the direction and focus of what DoorDash is looking at. And I think still a very kind of slight trickling, tapering off, more efficiencies for cost, they'll call it here. So I'm going to continue to watch this for you and see what they say next quarter.